Welcome to Sum It Up, Sermon Updates Midweek. This is May 19th of 2021. This past Sunday, I finished up the sermon series, Clinging to Hope in the Storm, a sermon series where we looked at the two accounts of Jesus dealing with his disciples in a boat in a storm. And in both the stories, we find the disciples, and Peter in particular in one of the stories, struggling to understand what's happening in the midst of the storm, as the disciples felt like they were drowning in Mark 4, and Peter felt like he was going to drown in Matthew 14. That sermon's title was, Even if our boat sinks and we go under, we're still safe. A fundamental tenet of Christianity is that we know that we have salvation, that means to be saved, at the end of our days. God has promised us our faith, our trust in Him, allows us to grasp, to cling to the hope that at the end we are going to be rescued. We are going to be saved. We will survive the storm. Now, this happens in a micro perspective in the miniature storms we go through in life, but is more realized in the macro perspective. We all go through difficulties. We all go through hardships. We all go through difficult times. And that does not change just because we become Christian. Things do not get easier. We just have the capability and the capacity to be able to deal with it better because of what God has done for us and through us in Jesus Christ. That's our hope. We can cling to that hope. Again, that doesn't mean that everything's going to work out simply and easily here, but it means that God has us in the palm of His hands. And for most of us, while our lives will end with death, unless the Lord returns soon within our lifetimes, actually, I assume that just about all of us will leave this world following our death. Again, if the Lord returns before then, that's fabulous, but for most of us, we will probably die here in this earth. But even if you die, we'll be safe. Did you hear that? Even if we die, we will be safe. It's my estimation that Christianity in America has become far too comfortable with the world that we live in, the nation that we live in, the time that we live, the opulence that we enjoy. And because of this, we have forgotten that this is not our permanent residence. This is not our forever home. We are just aliens and strangers. We're just passing through. But some of us on the way through have wanted to make a home right here. It reminds me of the Israelites as they were leaving Egypt and going into the wilderness, and so many of them really wanted to go back to Egypt because had God just brought them out into the desert to die? And they preferred slavery to the freedom they had under the authority and the control of God. And sometimes I feel like that's the way we've become today. We don't mind going back to where we came from. We're no longer looking for the promised land. We're content to go back to Egypt. What a dangerous trap that is. God provided manna and quail, water, what they needed while they were in the desert, but still they longed for what they had before. What is it within us that causes us to reach back and to want to go back to a place that had nothing to offer us but the instability of the stability we would exchange for all the promises of God? Even if our boat sinks and we go under, we're still safe. No matter what you face, no matter what you're going through, no matter what happens in your life, God has you in the palm of His hands. He's going to save you. Salvation is an interesting term in the New Testament. There's a sense in which salvation is immediate right now, when we trust in Jesus, that there's something that happens in the midst of our following the commands. Walter Scott used to use the 5-finger exercises: hear, believe, repent, confess, and be baptized. There are actually different versions of that, but that's the one I'll quote. And as we follow him, there's a sense in which we're saved through what we do in those 5 steps, but there's also a sense in which salvation is something that happens at the end, to where our salvation deals with everything in our life, everything that we go through, and not just what happens in this simple moment. Hold on, hang in there. The disciples and Peter felt like they were going to drown in the midst of their storm. And Jesus' response to the disciples in Mark 4 and Peter in Mark 14 is that, do you really have so little faith? Do you really not trust any more than that? We need to trust God, even when it looks like the storm is raging and we're going to drown. We need to understand that God's in control. Hey, cling to hope in the storm. We'll get through this, and we'll get through it together. God bless. Have a great day.